he's coming. It'll be him in a minute. Yeah. There's one thing about Baptist, though, Rusty. It takes a whole lot longer to warm them up than it does to cool them off. I can tell you that right now. But thank you for coming tonight with the service Friday night and Christmas and all. I wasn't sure. Y'all might be out Christmas shopping tonight. But thank you for coming. Thank you for watching us tonight. We certainly appreciate that. Don't forget, Friday, Christmas Eve service at 5:30. Here, where we will remember the Lord's Supper and honor Jesus for his birth. Will not be a long service, 15, 20 minutes, and we'll be out of here. So let me invite you to come back and let's make it a special service that night, as we always do. Now, tonight before I don't know how, we're about to wrap up, Paul. We're close. We moved along pretty good in the last month or two. We got 2 chapters to go and we'll be done. But the thing of it is this. I got a song I want you to listen to. And this, of course, you know who it is. It's about McCamey. That's who I listen to. And in this song, I don't think I got so many of them. I can't hardly remember what I played for you and what I ain't played for you. But I don't think I played this one for you. But it's a song that talks about getting ready to leave this world behind. There's a better place awaiting. And in this song, you notice in the very first parts of the song, the world that we live in, she calls it Satan's Eden, the world today. That Satan is ruling. And that's why there's so much heartache and heartbreak and so many bad things going on, because he's ruling it right now. But she talks about a day, and this is what I love here, and this is what I love about heaven. There'll be no more broken hearts. There'll be no more tears. There'll be no more doctor's appointments. There'll be no more. Everything will be just great there. What a day that'll be when that comes. So I don't even remember what the name of this song is, but I listen to it all the time. Dwight, play it for us here. Listen closer to the words. I'll tell you that all the time.
I've had my days of laughter in the sunshine, felt peace and contentment in my soul. But before the day had passed, my heart would be heavy. I'd have tears in my eyes, my head bowed low. Just how it is in Satan's Eden. Each day brings new heartache, pain, and woe. But my Lord has gone to build for me a city, and I've never been this homesick to go. Someday we'll leave it all behind us. raging tide. Then I'll leave this world and I'll never look behind me. For it's by the throne of God I will reside. Someday we're gonna leave it all behind us. Someday we'll walk this way no more. Somewhere it's called the sweet forever. And someday we'll step onto that shore. There'll be no more heartaches, no grief or pain, no dying in that land. No broken hearts, no broken homes, just joy on every hand. Someday we're gonna leave it all behind us. Someday we'll walk this way no more. Somewhere it's called the sweet forever. And someday we'll step onto that shore.
That sweet forever.
I'm thankful.
Someday we'll step on heaven's shore. I was listening one day this week to, what is it, WS? What's that Christian radio station here? Yeah, whatever. And I was listening to it. I can't I don't know the name of them things. But anyway, I was listening to it, and there was a preacher on there preaching. Now, understand, y'all know I'm different than most. But he said something, I don't know him, but I know of him. And he said something that hit my heart because this is something he and I disagree on. But he feels the way that probably 99% of the people feel. And I feel like maybe 1% of them feel. And that is, I have no fear of leaving this world behind me. The future does not scare me. I am like John over in the book of Revelation where John said at the close of the Bible, "So quickly come, Lord Jesus." You hear those words in that song that said, "There's not much in this world that attracts me anymore." That's me. That's me. Honest to God, church, that's me. Ain't nothing down here. And he said, I'm like most people. I want to go to heaven, but I don't want to go now. And I thought, wow. Different strokes for different folks. But I'm like that song we sing on Sunday night. Soon, and very soon. That's what I'm waiting for. And that's what I'm hoping for. To celebrate the next Christmas in heaven. Man. All right. Chapter 27. Got 2 to go. And we're going to wrap up this part. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going after this, but I think I know. But we'll get through this hopefully in the next few weeks. And Paul is pretty much at this point in time at the end of chapter 26 of Acts. He's gone through numerous trials, through kings, through governors, through Roman magistrates, and he's had trial after trial after trial. And remember the last thing King Agrippa said to him, "Paul, I would have set you free if you had not insisted on going to Rome. But since you're a Roman citizen and you insisted on going to Rome, I'm going to have to send you there." So this is where the last leg of Paul's ministry begins. The last leg of his journey. Sometimes the last leg of your journey is the hardest leg. That'd be hard to say in the life of Paul, because you look at all the things that he's been through in his life. Most of it in a prison. Beaten, left for dead, hated, crowds tried to kill him. So his life thus far has not been easy. And so what you think as you head and you're sailing back to Rome for the last leg of your journey to see the last person you're supposed to see. You ever think about that? Who'll be the last person you see? Paul wanted it to be Caesar. And so he starts on his journey. And it says, and when it was determined that we there is important. Because who wrote this book? Luke did. So evidently in my studying and reading this, Luke, who has taken care of him, remember Luke is a what? Doctor. So this, my understanding in reading this in these last months of Paul's life, that Luke has come back on the scene and has taken care of him. And now as he boards the ship, headed back to Rome, Luke is with him. And therefore the term we, that we should sail unto Italy. And they delivered Paul and certain other prisoners unto one named Julius, a centurion of Augustus' band. Now, Paul has been under a good many centurions. We talked about that in this journey that he has been on here. But this guy Julius, his main job was this: escorting prisoners to the prisons. And so because of who he was, this man had come down to take Paul and to be sure that he got to see Caesar and to escort him back up there. And entering into a ship of Adramyttium, we launched, meaning to sail by the coast of Asia, one Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, being with us. So this guy here, they're leaving out from this place. It's hard to pronounce it, but this was a place where many ships and the centurions would come and to pick them up to take them to Rome when they were leaving from the area of Asia over there. It says the next day we touched at Sidon. So they're on the ship. He's got them on the ship. They're heading toward Rome, and then they go to a place called Sidon. And Julius courteously entreated Paul and gave him liberty to go unto his friends and to refresh himself. Now, Paul, being a prisoner, had not had a lot of freedom like he would like to have had. So during this time, he was allowed to do that on the ship and to have more freedom than he would have had. And when he gets to Sidon, who he has friends there, that he is also allowed to go there. And so they stayed here. You understand, these journeys don't take a day or two. When you're leaving Asia on a boat, it ain't got no motor, it's got sails. And you better hope the wind's blowing your way, because you could stay that way forever if the wind's blowing in your face and never get over yonder. And this is what Paul's about to encounter on this journey with the wind as he goes out into the sea, out into the ocean. So he says, and when we had launched from thence, after they had spent some time in Sidon, now things had gone well to right now. When we had launched from thence, we sailed under Cyprus, because the winds were contrary. Now what this means is Mr. Jimmy, you're old Navy man, ain't you? Say yeah or nay. You want to tell me? You afraid I might ask you something? I do crossword puzzles. This was a crossword puzzle. That's how I know it. The leeward side in the Navy is always the safe side where the wind ain't blowing. And so as they begin to go out into the ocean, all of a sudden something happens that hadn't happened. They'd had smooth sailing up to now. But all of a sudden, the winds start blowing. Well, you need to understand that in those days on a boat, either the best friend you could have or the worst enemy you could have is the wind. The wind. And so as it began to get a little heavier and a little heavier, he said we stayed on the leeward side of it down at the bottom because we were afraid that if we launched out from the bottom of the island, got out into the wide open sea, that we might crash. And so he says when we started out that we launched and we went under Cyprus because the winds were contrary or the winds were blowing against us. And so what they were doing was seeking shelter from the wind, not making much headway, not moving along very good. And when we had sailed over the sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia. So what they're doing here is they're hugging the coastline. They're not getting out in the open seas. They're right now just hugging where if something happens, they can get off the boat and get on land instead of dying and the boat being turned over. So it tells you the places that they're going and how they are doing that. And he says, and there the centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing into Italy, and he put us on it. So, anytime a ship will sail from Alexandria to that area, that meant that it was what was called an imperial ship, a vast, much bigger boat than they were on. It was big enough that it could carry all the grain for a season from one part of Italy to another part of the country. That's how big this ship was. And because, as he said, the winds are getting contrary now, they're afraid that the little boat that they were on, I don't know how little it was, but it was nowhere in comparison to this boat, might not make it through. The guard put them on a larger ship, one of the imperial fleet of Italy that he was placed on to carry on further with their journey. And when we had sailed slowly many days, scarce was come over against Cnidus. The wind not suffering us, we sailed under Crete over against Salome. So what he's saying is, for days and days and days now, we're on our journey. And every time we try to get out into the open ocean, even with the big ship we're on, it's just too much for it. And what does he say? We go back up against the shore again. No matter where they're at, what they're doing, whether they're sailing under Crete, or he uses the term against Salome, means that they were hugging the coast so they could make a big escape. But now, when much time was spent and the sailing was now dangerous because the fast was already now past, Paul admonished them. So what has happened is, this is the time frame that they're in. They probably left somewhere in August. Now, at this time frame, they're somewhere between September and November still trying to get there. Well, Paul was hoping that he would make it in time for the last feast, as he said, that he would get there. But then he began to realize at the pace we're going now, we're not going to make it on time. Paul knew in his mind, and the only reason I know this is I read up on it. Paul said this, it's probably about November. If we have good sailing till February, that's probably how long it's going to take us to get to Rome. So this is a journey that probably started along last of August, 1st September, October, November, December, January, February, 6 months. that we're going to sail on these seas because the wind is keeping us from making progress. Every time we think we're going somewhere, we get blown back into an island somewhere. But this is the point I want you to make. Who controls the winds? God does. Do you think for 1 minute that Paul and them were late 1 minute to get wrong? No. There's always a purpose in delays. There's always a reason. God's never been late a day in his life, nor will he ever be a day in his life. He had Paul set in the prime position any preacher had ever been in, and he would get there when God needed him there, and he would show up there when God wanted him there. So Paul, I don't think, ever worried about that, other than he hate that he had missed this fast, which you and I know it happens in late September, which is what you and I call the Day of Atonement. That was the feast that he was talking about. But the thing is this, it's getting worse. The travel is getting more hazardous as they get closer to Rome. As they get closer to Rome and get into the big oceans there, things are starting to turn much worse. It says, and hardly passing it, we came into a place which is called the Fair Havens. Now where we went into the city of Lasea. Now when much time was spent, so this is the length of the journey. They still can't get out in the open water. Here they are at another island. Here they are still trying to launch and to get there, and here they are in a city that is called Fair Havens. So what has happened? Remember he said they were going into Crete. They couldn't get there. The winds would not allow that. So if you read this, you'll find that they went down around the southeast to the bottom of Crete, made land, went on over to the other place. I mean, let's be honest. You can't go where the winds don't allow you to go when you got a huge sailboat out there. It just don't work. Especially if God's trying to stop you. Especially if God's setting it up on his time and you're not going to sail any faster or get any faster than he wants you to get. And so this is what Paul is learning. So Paul then says unto them, after much time was spent, all right, we're stopped again. We're just waiting for the winds to settle down. Sailing was now dangerous. The feast was already past, and then Paul got on them. Paul admonished them. You know what Paul's saying? I don't think y'all know what y'all doing. Paul's kind of upset in the situation that is going on here, you know, and then what his thought is what? If we keep sailing like we're sailing, this ain't going to end up good here. And so he says in verse 10, sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading and the ship, but also our lives. Fellas, somebody needs to get in charge here. You can tell we're just going from here to here to here as the wind blows us. We're not anywhere much closer to Rome than we've been. So unless we come together and somebody takes charge of this, Lord only knows how long that it's going to take us to get in. And then he says, if we don't do something, because you see, it is the winter season. September, October, November, January, February. The winds are always the worst in the winter season over there. And Paul knows this, and he's not a seaman, but he knows this. And the slower and the longer we wait, he says, it's going to end in disaster. So, but nevertheless, the centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than those things which were spoken by Paul. What's Paul saying? We can't keep doing the same things we've been doing, folks. If you're failing at something and you keep on doing what you're failing at, what's going to be the final result of it? Failure. But the man that owned the ship and the centurion that was over the ship and the soldiers on the ship said what? Paul, you're a preacher. This guy's supposed to know what he's doing. So I'm going to listen to what he tells me instead of what you tell me. That's what he says. It's kind of like, I thought of when Jesus walked that day down to the ocean and Peter and the fishermen were out there cleaning their nets. And you remember the story where he said, Jesus asked them what they're doing, and they said, well, we've been fishing all day and all night, and we haven't caught a thing. And then Jesus, who ain't a fisherman, he was a carpenter's son, he tells them what? Y'all fishing on the wrong side of the boat, fellas. Now, I can imagine if I was Peter and Andrew, and these guys did this for a living. And a guy that is a carpenter comes up and tells him how to fish. That's like the guy in the bar up there coming and telling me how to preach. See what I'm saying? Ain't going to work. Sometimes who you think is the smartest guy in the room ain't the smartest guy in the room. But he says, I'll rather listen to the man that owns the ship. You know why he said that? That's where his paycheck come from. I'll listen to the man that pays me. He writes my check. Paul, I never even knew you till you got on this boat here. Centurions believed the master and the owner more than he believed what Paul spoke. And because the haven was not commodious to winter in, the more part advised to depart thence also, if by any means they might attain to Phoenix, and there to winter, which is in a haven of Crete. Now remember this. You'll forget this. They've been trying to get to Crete. Remember earlier? He said, but they couldn't get to it before. But they said if we stay here for the winter, we ain't going to make it no way. So we need to do the best we can to get to the island of Crete and winter there. And lies toward the southwest and the northwest. Now, Paul might not have been a ship captain, but Paul knew what was going on. And he knew that in the direction they're sailing in, this ain't going to get it. He said, we need to move to the southwest, get down there to that Isle of Phoenix, and settle there, and that is a much better place to stay in the wintertime than where we are now. What he's saying is what? We can stay here in that wind blowing, them storms coming, we'll freeze to death here. Let's go south. Let's go on down there. Let's go southwest and the northwest. And then it says, when the south wind blew softly, proposing that they had obtained their purpose, losing thence, they sailed close by to Crete. So what happened to them? They ended up going where Paul wanted to go anyway, didn't they? Paul kept saying, that's where we need to go spend the winter at. That's where we need to go, and to spend the winter at is there. And so they sailed close by Crete. But it was not long after there rose against it a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon. Well, what happens? Things are good for a while, and then what pops up? The worst wind they'd ever seen. The worst wind, it even had a name. Like we name our hurricanes, this wind was so strong and so bad, it had its own name. And when they mentioned that name, they knew that it was going to be the strongest and most dangerous wind that usually came across the Mediterranean Sea, which is where they were. This wasn't Paul's first rodeo. He knows this stuff. So they're there. And I like this. It blew softly until they had obtained their purpose. They sailed high. But it was not long until a tempestuous wind. And when the ship was caught and could not bear up into the wind, we let her drive. You know what that means? That wind blew so hard. I don't care how many sailors they had on that boat. I don't know how tall the sails were or the ropes that controlled it. They could not control the ship anymore. The wind had it. The wind did with the boat what the wind wanted to do. By far the worst wind that they had faced. Into a place where at first when they got there, it says was soft and safe. But the longer they stayed, the worse it got. Until finally, they just lost control of everything. The wind got the boat. We let her drive. And run upon a certain island which is called Clauda. We had much work to come by the boat. It carried it to a different place. Now you can notice there's a lot of names in here. A lot of islands in here. A lot of places they're hitting. And they ain't close to Rome yet. But they're going to a lot of places. And it says that they went there, and when they got there, there was much work to be done to secure that boat again. There was much repairs that had to be done there. And so what they had to do was to begin rigging the ship again, putting that ship together, trying to patch it up as best they could so they could get back out in the ocean and start sailing again. So where are we now? Delays, delays, delays. Have you noticed in this so far? Ain't nothing going right here yet. Have you noticed that? Everywhere they've been, it might start out good, but it ends up bad. And when I read this and been over this time and time again, just reading it, man, it reminded me so much of life. Life is just like a ship on the sea. Tall waves, low waves. That's the way life is. Sometimes you're up here on the top of the wave, Brother Jimmy. Sometimes you down about to get swallowed by the wave. That's life. That's the way it is. This is a great example of life. Of how life does. Sometimes it picks you up. Sometimes it knocks you down. Which when they had taken up, they used helps. They undergirded the ship. And fearing lest that they should fall into the quicksands, they straight sail and so were driven. So what happens is, they start putting the hull back together again. When they says in that scripture that they straight sail, that means to keep from having the ship just tossed to and fro everywhere, they put down anchors all around it to keep the wind. Once they had got into the sandbar, had got on the sand, they tried their best to anchor that ship down until they could repair that ship. So that was the first step that they had to do, was get it where they could sail again. Now how long it took them, I don't have a clue. Doesn't say. But then they got out on the sea again. All right, quit. I'm trying to finish this up. Now, no matter what you do, most time when you have something that's been damaged like that, kind of like in the car business, you say it's been totaled, but instead of totaling it, you want to repair it and fix it up. Ain't never going to be like it was. They wired the hull back together. They put the sails back up. They got that boat where it could sail again. How long it took them, Lord only knows that and them. But they got it going again. They pulled the anchors up, and they started back out to sea, headed toward Rome. But what happened? Here comes the wind again. And we, being exceedingly tossed with a tempest or storm, the next day they lightened the ship. That means they started throwing stuff overboard. They were so afraid that the water was going to come in and the wind was going to come in and they would go drown. And so what did they do? They started throwing the grain overboard. They started throwing the things that they had overboard. They started getting rid of all those things. And the third day, we cast out with our own hands the tackling of the ship. The tackling of the ship. And when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, this is where I'll stop with. All hope that we should be saved was then taken away. No giving up. Sometimes life hits you so bad, it hits you so hard, and like these storms here, about the time you think you're about to get it together, a stronger storm comes. I've known people like this in my ministry that it seemed like they were constantly from one storm to another. About the time they dealt with this storm, got kind of back squared away, something else would hit them. It was always something. You know what you want to do sometimes? I've been there to some degree. I don't know that I've ever been there to this degree. I just quit. I worked my hands to the bone. We've done everything we can do to make the ship sailable. It's nowhere good as it was. So this is what they say. What's the use? If I told you how many times in my life when people were going through some dark, troubled times in their life, they looked at me and said, "Preacher, what's the use? It don't ever get any better." Oh, I've heard that so many times. What's the use? The harder I try, the worse it gets. Kind of like old Job in the Bible. But Job had the right attitude. One thing I can say about Job, he lost about everything he had. It was taken away from him. Did he deserve it? No. God said he was a just, a great man. But it don't matter if you're a Christian good. Listen, bad things happen to good people. That's just it. That's life. Storms come in Christians' life just like they do it. Christians get cancer just like anybody else do. Christians have heart attacks just like anybody else does. We don't really none of us know what's right down the corner on us. Nobody knows whether we'll be here tomorrow or not. That's why the Bible says, be sure you get today because you may not, he said, you're not promised tomorrow. They said, listen, August, September, October, November, December. We've done nothing. Sail from here to here, fix ships. Now we've done throwed all our goods away. We done throwed all that we had away, and we're hardly no closer than where we used to be. Let's just let it go. That's what they said. That's a tough place to be. But I don't ever say you won't get there, because none of us know what lies ahead for us. The last man was just not done yet, and you know that. That wanted to hear that. Paul. Why? Because Paul knew God had a plan for him, and even the storm couldn't deter the plan that he had for Paul's life. But they said, no, this ain't worth it. It ain't worth it to keep on trying. We just give up. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. So that's what they decide they do. And we'll stop there tonight. All right. If you have your prayer list, thank y'all for being with us tonight. God bless you. Have a good Christmas. If you can, come Friday evening for our Christmas Eve service. And God bless you. Thank you for being here tonight. You can see we're about to wrap this up.